Stumbling on Happiness by Daniel Gilbert. Picture this: November 11th, 1887, Chicago. A man named Adolf Fischer is standing on the gallows, about to be executed for a crime he didn't even commit. He's caught in the crossfire of a political battle he lost. Everyone watching expects him to beg for mercy, to rage against the injustice, to break down in terror. Instead, as they slip the noose around his neck, he says something that stuns the crowd. "This is the happiest moment of my life. Then, it's over." Now jump ahead about 45 years to March 14, 1932. George Eastman, the genius who invented the Kodak camera, is sitting at his desk. This guy has it all. He's incredibly wealthy, beloved by millions, and has spent years giving his fortune away to make the world better. By every measure society uses, he's won at life. He writes a brief note, sets down his pen, and takes his own life. So here's the puzzle that should blow your mind. One man is staring down an unjust, brutal death and claims he's never been happier. The other has everything we're taught to chase, and he chooses to end it all. What's going on here? We all think we know what makes a good life, right? Get the promotion, find the perfect partner, move to that dream city. Avoid failure, stay comfortable, keep control. We spend every day steering toward futures we believe will make us happy. But what if our internal compass is completely off? What if we're terrible at knowing what will actually make us happy? That's exactly what Harvard psychologist Daniel Gilbert explores in his fascinating book, Stumbling on Happiness. And let me be clear, this isn't one of those 10 Easy Steps to Bliss books. It's way more interesting than that. It's like someone giving you X-ray glasses to see how your own brain works, and then showing you all the ways it tricks you every single day. Here's what we're going to uncover today: the 3 massive illusions your mind creates whenever you try to imagine your future. You'll see why your memories are unreliable, why your view of right now is distorted, and why your vision of tomorrow is basically fiction. And here's the kicker: I'm going to share a ridiculously simple method for predicting your own happiness that actually works, even though it sounds too easy to be true. Let's dive in and figure out why we're all so hilariously bad at knowing what will make us happy. Here's something wild. Out of every creature on this planet, we're the only ones who spend half our lives living in the future. Sure, a squirrel hides nuts for winter, but that's just programming. It sees the days getting shorter and instinct kicks in. The squirrel isn't lying awake at night wondering if it saved enough nuts or if it should have diversified into acorns. But us, we're constantly time traveling. We skip dessert today for abs next summer. We sit through mind-numbing lectures for careers we hope will fulfill us decades later. We sacrifice constantly for futures we can only imagine. This superpower comes from a specific part of your brain called the frontal lobe. It's evolution's latest upgrade, the last piece to develop, and it basically turns your brain into a time machine. To understand how crucial this is, let me tell you about Phineas Gage. Back in 1848, this guy was working as a railroad foreman when an explosion sent a 3.5-foot iron rod rocketing through his skull. It went in through his cheek and out the top of his head, taking a chunk of his frontal lobe with it. Amazingly, he survived. He could still walk, talk, do his job. But something fundamental had changed. He'd lost his ability to imagine the future, to plan ahead. Scientists described him as being bound to present stimuli. He was stuck in the now, living moment to moment with no concept of later. Without that frontal lobe, we'd all be like Phineas. No anxiety about tomorrow, sure, but also no ability to prepare for it. And this reveals why we spend so much mental energy thinking about the future. We want to control it. We believe if we can just see the different paths ahead, we can pick the one leading to happiness. We're the species that learned to look forward, convinced our foresight lets us shop for the best possible future. But here's where things get interesting. The tool we use for this shopping, our imagination, is deeply, systematically broken. It's not a crystal clear window into the future. It's more like a funhouse mirror. And it creates 3 major illusions that make us stumble over and over in our pursuit of happiness. The first illusion Gilbert calls realism. Think about remembering your last birthday dinner. Feels like you're pulling out a photograph from a mental album, right? Except you're not. Your brain doesn't store complete recordings. That would take way too much storage space. Instead, it saves a few key details: the tough steak, that rude waiter, the surprise guest. Then when you want to remember, your brain just fills in the gaps. It makes up the rest. And it does this so smoothly and quickly that you have absolutely no idea it's happening. Gilbert calls this the, quote, filling in trick. Scientists have proven this in countless clever experiments. In one famous study, people watched a video of a red car approaching a yield sign. Later, they were asked a sneaky question. Did another car pass the red car while it was stopped at the stop sign? Notice the switch. When they were later shown two pictures, one with a yield sign and one with a stop sign, most people confidently remembered the stop sign that was never there. The question had literally changed their memory. Your brain does this with what you see right now, too. Right this second, there's a blind spot in the back of your eye where your optic nerve connects. No visual receptors there at all. So why don't you see a black hole in your vision? Because your brain makes an educated guess based on what's around it and just fills it in. You don't see reality. You see a beautifully edited version your brain serves up. And here's the connection that changes everything. Your brain does the exact same thing when you imagine the future. If I ask you to imagine having spaghetti for dinner tomorrow, what pops into your head? It's not some abstract concept, right? Your brain instantly creates a specific plate of spaghetti. Maybe it's your mom's recipe with those big meatballs. Maybe it's that fancy pasta from your favorite Italian place. You see it clearly, and then you predict whether you'd enjoy it. But your prediction is based entirely on details your brain just invented. What if the actual spaghetti tomorrow comes from a can? Your prediction will be completely wrong, not because you don't know what you like, but because you predicted your reaction to one future and ended up living a different one. We do this constantly. We accept a party invitation, imagining great music and lively conversation, then feel disappointed when it's quiet, with some bored person playing harp in the corner. We predicted our feelings based on a mental movie our brain created, never stopping to realize those details were total fiction. That's the first half of the realism illusion, the filling in trick. The other half is the leaving out trick. Sherlock Holmes once solved a case by noticing the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. The inspector was confused. The dog did nothing in the nighttime, he said. That, replied Holmes, was the curious incident. The dog didn't bark, which meant the intruder was someone familiar. Holmes cracked the case by noticing what wasn't there. Our brains are terrible at this. We notice what's present, but we're basically blind to what's absent. And when we imagine the future, we leave out crucial details without realizing it. Scientists call this focalism. We zoom in on the one event we're imagining and forget about everything else that'll be happening in our lives at the same time. Think about the myth that people in California are happier. When you hear California, what comes to mind? Sunny beaches, perfect weather, majestic redwoods. You focus on these amazing things, but you forget about the traffic, the astronomical cost of living, the earthquakes, and the fact that Californians still have to do laundry, pay bills, and wait in line at the grocery store, just like everyone else. Weather is one tiny slice of life, but because we focus on it and ignore everything else, we overestimate its impact on happiness. The truth? Californians aren't any happier than anyone else. This leaving out trick leads to one of our biggest mistakes. We massively overestimate how much future events will affect us, both good and bad. When college students predict how they'll feel a few days after their team wins or loses a big game, they imagine victory's joy or defeat's agony lasting for days. But they're wrong. Why? Because a few days later, their happiness will also depend on chemistry exams, parties with friends, and whether the cafeteria is serving that mystery meat again. They focus on one event and forget that life is this rich tapestry of many experiences happening simultaneously. This is why we're so wrong about tragedy. When people with sight imagine being blind, they only focus on the absence of vision. They don't imagine all the other dimensions of life, listening to music, enjoying picnics, falling in love, getting annoyed at taxes. Because their imagined future leaves out all these other aspects, they drastically underestimate how satisfying such a life could be. So that's the first illusion, realism. Our imagination is like a rushed artist who makes up some details and leaves out others entirely. And because we don't see the artist at work, we mistake the sketch for a photograph. The second major illusion is presentism, the unavoidable way our current feelings contaminate our predictions about the future. You know this one from experience. Ever gone grocery shopping hungry? You probably came home with a cart full of junk you didn't need. Why? Because when you're hungry, it's nearly impossible to imagine a future when you won't be. Your present hunger colors your vision of future desires. Or, think about that vow we've all made after Thanksgiving dinner. You're sprawled on the couch in a food coma, barely breathing because your lungs have no room to expand, muttering, "I'll never eat again." In that moment, feeling stuffed is so overwhelming, you genuinely can't imagine ever wanting to feel hungry again. And yet you're probably eating again that same night. This happens because of what Gilbert calls the reality-first policy in your brain. When you try to imagine how you'll feel in the future, your brain first generates a feeling right now. He calls this pre-feeling. If you imagine eating pizza, you get a little spark of pleasure in this moment, and you use that spark to predict the bigger pleasure to come. It's a clever shortcut, but there's a problem. Your emotional brain regions are already busy reacting to whatever's happening in the real world right now, and reality always gets priority. In one clever study, researchers called people on sunny days and rainy days and asked how satisfied they were with their lives overall. People called on sunny days reported being significantly happier with their lives. Did they have better lives? Of course not. Their brains were reacting to the actual weather outside, but they mistook that feeling as their answer about their life in general. Their present feeling leaked into their global judgment. This is why, when you're in a bad mood, it's hard to imagine enjoying a party. Your current gloominess spills into your prediction of the future. You're not really imagining the future party, you're just experiencing your present mood and assuming it'll persist. Presentism also messes us up through comparison. The value of something rarely stands alone. It depends on what we compare it to. You'd probably drive across town to save $50 on a $100 radio, but you wouldn't do the same to save $50 on a $100,000 car. $50 is $50, but its subjective value shifts with context. The problem is, the comparison we make now, while imagining a future, often isn't the comparison we'll make later when living it. When you're shopping for speakers, you compare the big boxy ones with the small sleek ones in the store. The big ones sound noticeably better, so you buy them. But at home, you never again compare their sound to the speakers you left behind. Instead, you compare their ugly boxiness to your beautiful furniture every single day. The comparison that drove your decision in the present isn't the comparison that determines your happiness in the future. This brings us to the third and perhaps most fascinating illusion, rationalization. Let's circle back to those surprising stories from the beginning. Why do people who've experienced terrible things, public humiliation, unjust imprisonment, even paralysis, so often claim their lives were actually improved by the tragedy? It seems impossible to us as we imagine it, but that's because we fail to appreciate the power of what Gilbert calls our psychological immune system. Just like your physical immune system fights off germs, your psychological immune system defends your mind against unhappiness. It's a system of unconscious mental processes that help you change your view of the world, so you feel better about the world you find yourself in. It does this by cooking the facts. When something happens, especially something negative, your brain gets busy looking for ways to see it in a more positive light. Because experiences are complex and ambiguous, there are always multiple ways to view them. Your immune system helps you find the view that's both positive and believable. This is why, after you buy a toaster, you suddenly think it's the best toaster ever made. It's why gamblers are more confident their horse will win after they've placed the bet than before. It's why voters feel more positive about their candidate after casting their vote. Once something becomes ours, our choice, our experience, our fate, our immune system gets to work finding ways to love it. Here's the key. This process is almost entirely unconscious. We have no clue our brains are doing this. We don't feel ourselves cooking the facts, we just taste the delicious meal that results. And because we're unaware of this psychological immune system, we fail to predict it'll kick in when bad things happen. When we imagine a future tragedy, we imagine the initial shock and pain. Period. We don't imagine the unconscious reframing process that will soften that pain over time. This ignorance creates some bizarre paradoxes. Your psychological immune system, like a national defense system, is triggered by big threats, not small ones. A broken pencil is annoying, but it doesn't threaten your well-being, so your immune system ignores it. A failed marriage or lost job, though, that's a full-scale assault, triggering a powerful defensive response. The paradoxical result is that we sometimes recover faster from major trauma than from minor annoyances. You might forgive a spouse for a huge betrayal, but stay irritated for years about their habit of leaving dirty socks on the floor. The big event triggers your defenses, helping you find peace with it. The small annoyance flies under the radar, never triggering your defenses, so it irritates you forever. Because we don't know this, we wrongly assume bigger problems will always cause more lasting misery than smaller ones. Another trigger for our immune system is inescapability. We're more likely to find a positive view when we're stuck with something. In a wonderful study, photography students were told they could keep one of their 2 best prints. Some were told their choice was final. Others were told they could change their minds for several days. Who was happier with their photo? The ones whose choice was final. When the decision was locked in, their psychological immune system activated, finding all the wonderful things about the photo they chose. The students who could change their minds kept comparing the two, focusing on the flaws of their choice and the virtues of the one they left behind. Freedom, it seems, is the enemy of rationalization, yet if you ask people, they'll almost always say they prefer having the freedom to change their minds. We don't realize the very freedom we seek can undermine the natural processes that would otherwise lead to satisfaction. So we're in quite a pickle. Our imagination makes systematic errors of realism and presentism, and it fails to account for the powerful, unconscious workings of our psychological immune system. Experience doesn't seem to fix this because our memories of how we felt are just as flawed as our predictions. And the cultural wisdom we receive is often just a set of super-replicating false beliefs, like the ideas that money and children guarantee happiness, that persist not because they're true but because they help societies perpetuate themselves. Is there any hope? If we can't trust our own minds, what can we do? Gilbert offers a solution that's as simple as it is powerful, and as effective as it is unpopular. The best way to predict how you'll feel in the future isn't to imagine it. It's to find someone currently in the situation you're contemplating and ask them how they feel. He calls this using others as surrogates. This sounds too simple, right? Your first objection is probably, but I'm special, I'm unique. How another person feels won't tell me anything about how I'll feel. We all believe we're as unique as our fingerprints. But this belief in our own uniqueness is largely a myth. Yes, we differ in the details. You love ballet, I love baseball. But underneath those surface differences, our emotional reactions to major life events are far more similar than we think. Gilbert and his colleagues tested this directly. In one experiment, they had one group of people, simulators, use their imagination to predict how they'd feel after a certain experience. They had another group, surrogators, make the same prediction, but they weren't allowed to use imagination. Instead, they simply saw a report of how another randomly chosen person felt after the exact same experience. The results were stunning. Time and again, across different situations, the surrogators made far more accurate predictions about their own future happiness than the simulators did. By relying on the real, live report of a single random stranger, they avoided all the errors and biases of imagination. They essentially got a direct report from their own future. And yet, when people are given the choice between using their own imagination and using a surrogate's report, they overwhelmingly choose imagination. We reject the single most effective tool we have for predicting our future happiness. Why? Because we don't believe we're like other people. We think of ourselves as special, unique, different. We're so convinced of our own individuality that we'd rather trust our flawed, biased, error-prone imagination than the honest report of a fellow human being. The irony is profound. The best information is right there in the people around us, but we're too busy looking inside our own heads to see it. So what do we do with all of this? It can feel a bit disheartening, can't it? Learning that the one guide we've always trusted, our own mind's eye, is so often leading us astray. But I don't think that's the real message of stumbling on happiness. The message isn't despair, it's profound humility and unexpected opportunity. We live in a world our ancestors could only dream of. For the first time in history, we have incredible freedom to choose our own lives, where to live, what to do, who to love. Our happiness is, in a very real sense, in our own hands. The great project of our lives is using this freedom to make choices that bring us satisfaction. And this book reveals that the primary tool we use for this project, our imagination, is unreliable. It's like trying to build a house with a bent ruler and a crooked level. The power of Daniel Gilbert's work is that it doesn't just tell us our tools are broken, it shows us exactly how they're broken. And once you understand the illusions of realism, presentism, and rationalization, you can begin to account for them. You can't make the illusions disappear, you'll still feel like California is happier, and you'll still think freedom to change your mind is always good, but you can learn to be skeptical of these feelings. You can learn to question your own intuition. So how can you apply this in your own life, starting today? Here are a few simple ideas. First, become a humble observer of the present. The next time you face a big decision, choosing a college, deciding on a career path, even picking a vacation spot, don't just rely on your imagination. Your imagination will serve you a glossy, airbrushed brochure. Instead, find people living that reality right now. If you're thinking of becoming a lawyer, don't just imagine dramatic courtroom scenes. Talk to a third-year associate at a law firm. Ask them what their Tuesday was like. Ask them how they're feeling today. Their real, present experience is a much better predictor of your future than your imagined one. Second, distrust the tyranny of the detail. When your imagination serves up a vivid picture of a future, whether wonderful or terrible, remember it's just a sketch. Ask yourself two powerful questions. What important details am I leaving out of this picture? And what details am I putting in that are just my brain's best guess? This simple act of questioning the image can help you remember the future is almost always more complex and more moderate than your imagination makes it seem. And finally, have a little more faith in your own resilience. You're tougher than you think. Your psychological immune system is a powerful and loyal friend, but it works in the shadows. Because you don't see it working, you don't trust it'll be there for you. But it will. Understanding this should give you more courage. It should free you up to take worthy risks. That scary job, that relationship that feels like a leap of faith, you might just find that even if you stumble, you have an incredible capacity to get back up, dust yourself off, and find a new way to see the world that makes it a pretty good place to be after all. That was a summary of Stumbling on Happiness by Daniel Gilbert. We've certainly covered the main ideas today, but I have to be honest with you. A summary is like looking at a travel poster of the Grand Canyon. The real, breathtaking experience happens when you stand at the edge of it yourself. The true magic of this book is in the way Gilbert's stories and experiments slowly unravel your own assumptions, letting you see the workings of your own mind with a clarity you've never had before. This summary is designed to give you a map. If anything we've talked about today has sparked your curiosity, I truly encourage you to pick up a copy of the book. Reading it isn't just about learning new facts, It's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see yourself and the choices you make every day. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets me know these journeys are meaningful to you, and it ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and keep growing together.